Hello, welcome to a quick tutorial on Hitomezashi stitching. It's a relatively simple process once you get the hang of it, but it can be a little bit confusing at first. So let me make sure that you understand the basics here. So here I have an 8 by 16 grid of dots, and I am generating the digits 0 through 9 randomly. So these 7, 6, 0, 2, 0, 6, 9, 1 that you're seeing up the left side, that doesn't mean anything, it's just random digits. And the same thing is true along the bottom here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate my stitch. I'm going to stitch, not stitch, stitch, not stitch. And I'm going to do that along every single row, and then I'm going to do the same thing along every single column. And what's going to determine whether I'm going to start with a stitch or start with a not stitch is whether I have an even digit, 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. So we'll work from the bottom up and from the left to the right. So notice this 7 right here, that's an odd number. So I am not going to stitch in between these two first dots, but then I will alternate from that point on. And so I'll get this for my first, I'll get this for my first row. 6 is an even number, so I'll stitch that first one, but then I'll skip and then I'll stitch, so it'll be on, off, and that will continue. 0 is also an even number, so that one will look almost exactly like the one below it. 2 is an even number, so that'll look the same. 0 and 6 are both even numbers, so those will look the same, but now it'll get a little different because 9 is an odd number. So rather than stitching first, I'll not stitch first, and then I'll stitch, not stitch. 1 is also an odd number, so that top row will look the same as well. So that's how you generate your rows. Now, columns work the same way. So we're going to still use 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And so I'm going to go along the bottom row here, and wherever I see an odd number, I am not going to stitch. But then when I see an even number, I am going to stitch. So this first column, because 3 is odd, will not be stitched, but then it will be stitched, and then it won't be stitched, and then it will be stitched. So that first column is going to look like that. The second column, because 2 is an even number, will start with a stitch. And then the third column will look like the second column, because 4 is also even. And you'll notice that I have a series of even numbers all the way until I get to 7. So when I get over there to that 7, that's the first time again where we won't stitch initially, but then we will stitch. And we'll continue this pattern all the way down. And so this is an 8 by 16 stitching pattern. Now I'd like to point out that the even number is completely arbitrary. And if you choose to try this out on my tool, you're welcome to change these numbers. So you could do like 2, 3, 5, 7. Hopefully you realize those are the prime numbers. And when you do that, it changes to a very different pattern, even though I have the exact same numbers that I had before. Or I could only do multiples of 5, which would be 0 and 5, and that changes the pattern again. Or I could do multiples of 3, so 0, 3, 6, or 9, and I get this pattern. Or I could just make the number 7 the special number that means it's going to start with an on instead of an off. So you really can choose however you want that switch to work. Now, this is a relatively small pattern, and so I would really encourage you, if you do try out this tool, I would really encourage you to try and go with a much larger stitching pattern. So let's go to 80 and 160, and then let's go back to my 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So we're going to turn the stitches on when it's an even digit. And when I zoom out here, you can start to see that the pattern becomes much more interesting. And so this is what Hitomezashi stitching is. And I would encourage you also to check out the other video that I posted, which is a Numberphile video where they use letters instead of using digits. All right, everybody, I hope that helped. Thanks.